To become more biographical again in terms of the concern I have in my own work, as I look back over 30 years teaching religion and studying religion, particularly Catholicism, I guess the single concern that I have is the cultural context for understanding religion and theology. And I know back in the late 1960s, this was not really articulated in my own mind, but when I was thinking of going to graduate school, I was looking for schools that took an interdisciplinary approach to questions of ethics. I did not want to go to a theology program or a religious studies program where the emphasis in studying ethics was solely within the philosophical or theological framework of the seminary or the school, the graduate school. And as I was preparing applications for several graduate schools, I spent a great deal of time figuring out the approach that was taken to the area of ethics, and settled pretty quickly on Union Theological Seminary because they had a much greater interdisciplinary approach, a much more sympathetic understanding of culture in relationship to religion than most other graduate schools. At that time, I also filled out an application for a Fulbright fellowship, and the focus of my concern in the Fulbright was why Catholicism had changed so dramatically in the Netherlands in the 1960s, going from one of the most conservative churches, conservative theological groups in the world, in the Catholic world, to becoming one of the what's called the most liberal groups in such a short period of time. And I received a Fulbright as a result of that proposal, and what became very clear to me was the nature of Dutch society as the greatest impetus for bringing about change in the Catholic Church, that this was a society that had always promoted tolerance, that had a great democratic tradition, where there was a fairly good sense of equality between Catholics and Protestants. For instance, I was told soon after I arrived there that no one had been martyred or killed for religious reasons in Dutch religious history, and to me, which it was quite an astounding revelation. And as a result of looking back on that year in the Netherlands, I now realize that what drew me there was this sense of culture and context in relationship to religious thinking and how churches work. And it was a clear case of a change in that church, very much related to the openness to change within Dutch society, particularly after World War II. As I think back then to graduate school, my interest was quickly drawn to James Luther Adams, a Unitarian theologian who taught at Harvard for many years. And that was his great concern, the issue of culture, sociological understanding of religion, the importance of voluntary associations, which then led me to write my doctoral dissertation on Adams' work, which is really about society and the individual, and the importance of liberal Protestantism in the mid and early part of the 20th century. At the present time, as I look back over the last 15 to 20 years, I have been drawn very much to the issue of culture in higher education. And at Manhattan College, I was asked, or I had asked really, to set up a Center for Professional Ethics, the intent of which would be to increase ethics education across the curriculum. It soon became clear to me that the issue was not so much the curriculum as it was campus culture, and that the greatest lessons that students would learn about ethics was how they were taught by or regarded by faculty and administrators, the type of the respect for their own dignity that occurred on the campus. That would say more about ethics education than anything that was done in a business ethics class or any class on moral theology. As a result of that, I embarked on a project called the Values Audit, where with the cooperation of the administration, I was able to do a 2-year study of the relationship between what the college says it is and what actually happens in practice. In a sense, it's a self-study around the question, do we practice what we preach? So that gives you some sense of the evolution of my own thinking and what seems to be important, and probably explains why I say that Catholic higher education is most important. I'm not concerned about the presence of religious studies departments or theology departments in Catholic colleges and universities. The philosophy is different. But theology and religion is a relative newcomer to religious colleges and universities, at least as formal disciplines. What I'm concerned about is the nature of Catholicism in the university, how we understand fundamental questions in Catholic intellectual life and how they're dealt with in philosophy and religion in the business school. Shouldn't it make a difference that a student graduates from a Catholic school of business as opposed to going to a school of business at a state university? That would be my greatest concern at the present time, and particularly within the context of Catholic higher education.